So can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we've got your full page.
Okay, great. And then can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So let's get started. So today my topic is how to work with Chinese pharma clients confidently on publication writing projects. As then introduced, I have been working with EDAN, but then I also run my own business. I'm the founder and managing director of Acurit Medical Communications. But actually, in essence, my focus is on bilingual Chinese medical communications. So just some disclosures. We support MedComs agencies and CROs to work with Chinese clients in pharma and nutrition. It's a revenue generating activity for the company. And the information presented here reflects my knowledge and opinion as a presenter today. I know there are people in this meeting far more knowledgeable, sorry, from the Chinese pharma side or MedComs agency side. I'm here today to share my perspective, having been in both worlds. And I welcome your comments and questions at the end. So first, let's go through the presentation first. And some general background of the China pharma market. As you probably already know, China is now the world's second largest pharma market after the US. On the left, you can see the graph about the China pharma market scale. And then you can see it's growing year by year. This is the numbers here. They are in the Chinese currency CNY in 100 million CNY as unit. And then the exchange rate is about $1 is about 7 CNY. So this is pulled out from Chinese online resources. I didn't convert it to the US dollar, but then you can see the scale. It's growing year by year. And on the left, on the right, you can see the three biggest therapeutic areas in China from the 2020 data. They are, I hope that's probably a little bit smaller with the fonts, but then I will spell them out. So the three biggest therapeutic areas are GI and metabolism, anti-cancer, and cardiovascular. They cover all areas of the activities in pharma, such as R&D, clinical trials, but then of course, post writing is also a big part. Altogether, these three combined accounting for about 40% of all therapeutic areas. So what is Chinese pharma's needs in terms of the publication writing? This is a very nice poster from the ISMAP annual meeting 2021. It's a survey conducted by a number of Chinese medical publication professionals. And then you can see here, more than 7 out of 10, actually 71% Chinese medical publication professionals think that there is a need for more qualified and more in terms of the number of medical writing services. So this is the Chinese farmers' needs. On the other hand, I also did some research about Western MedComs agencies. It's not easy to have a clear figure, but I think this is a good indication. This number of 180 is from the MedComs networking website from Peter Llewellyn. And the agencies majority of the agencies are from the UK, but then it also covers globally. So I think this 180 gives a good indication of the scale of the MedComs agencies. So from those data, we can see that the Chinese pharma clients have the needs and the Western agencies have capacity and expertise. But it seems like there's a gap. So, or there are gaps. So what's the gap? I did an informal survey on LinkedIn, asking people about perceived barriers working with China. And what we get is the data here. Primarily, there are two types of gaps that MedComs agencies perceive. One is the linguistic or cultural barriers. It's about accounting for 60% of the barriers people perceive. Another is regulatory barriers, accounting for 40%. And in addition, if I can add, there are also different communication channels for Chinese pharma clients. And for example, I listed here, for them, there is no access to LinkedIn posts, Google, major social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you name it. So it's like the agencies in the West or outside of China, we are used to use all those communication channels, but for Chinese pharma, they don't have access to it. It's not like they don't communicate, they still communicate within China, but then they use different communication channels. So it's like we are not on the same channels. So that's additional barrier or challenges to communicate with them. However, we can see that the market is there and then the opportunities are there. If as MedComs agencies, we can manage risks and seize opportunities, then Chinese pharma in terms of publication writing can be an excellent opportunity for MedComs agencies. So how do we do that? Then the following slides are based on my personal experience and observations. And I will divide them into three parts mainly. They are how to find Chinese pharma clients in pubs writing, and then how to close deals. And then the third part is how to manage the projects once you secure them. So the last part will be some commonly asked questions from clients and from colleagues. So I will also list those. So those are like this. So first is with all the challenges and opportunities, how do we find Chinese pharma clients? You have, so first some overview about China. When I say China, politically or from the location-wise, we exclude Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. And then actually we call this like mainland China. The official written language is simplified Chinese, and the official spoken language is Chinese Mandarin. These are also my native language of writing and speaking. English is taught from primary school, but most people are not fluent because it's simply not practiced in daily life. Especially speaking in English is a challenge, including people working in big multinational companies. Those people, they are used to writing in English. However, they speaking English is still a challenge. So predominantly the preference for spoken language is always Chinese Mandarin and sometimes a local dialect. But don't worry about the local dialect part. For a native language speaker, as long as they can speak Chinese Mandarin, it's the communication is barrier-free. Like for myself, I'm a native Mandarin speaker. I used to have a local dialect, but I lost it. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the communication at all. So talking about that, the next step background is the current COVID-19 situation. Well, as you know, the situation changes very fast. When I look at this slide, just a few days ago, it's the case regarding the zero COVID infection policy, like quarantine, like PCR checks. But just in a matter of few days, it seems like China is easing up the restrictions, and then they are not frequently checking the PCR anymore, and then it seems like they're starting to open up, and people are quite happy about that. But since now we are still in a little bit of the uncertainty of the transition period, so it still holds true that scheduled in-person meetings and conferences are frequently disrupted. So it still holds true that I suggest using online channels to engage. So talking about the online channels, we cannot escape a popular Chinese platform called WeChat. There are three main channels within WeChat that you can use. One is called Moments, so you can post content there. And the second one is Group. Almost every WeChat user joins groups. It's very much like WhatsApp groups, and the chats are not structured. There are some groups that are very active, some are not so much. And then the groups are both professional and private, like whatever topic you can think about, there's a group for it. So if you join an active group, there is a lot of valuable information shared there that you cannot otherwise access from open resources. And the third path is official accounts. You can use either corporate or personal official account to post content. And then the audience there is quite tolerant on soft promotion materials there, like kind of soft marketing materials there. Ideally, you would like to post your content primarily in Chinese to inform and educate. So unfortunately in China, because as I said earlier, the language is the official language, the preferred language is Chinese. So that's just the ideal situation. That's the social media part. Another is because as I said, at this point of the time, we still suggest online channels to engage and inform. Another way to find Chinese pharma clients is via virtual meetings and conferences. For example, now a lot of meetings are virtual, like DIA, like there is also a very influential and well-known conference called Chinese Medical Affairs Conference. As we know, medical affairs and medical writing are constantly interplay together. So that's online. And I also wanted to point out like the APAC MW medical writer quarterly Zoom meeting like this one, because oftentimes we have attendees both from China and also from outside of China. So this is an an excellent opportunity to engage, and then also to engage with people on a one-on-one level. And we are always looking for qualified speakers. So just plug in. Another way to find Chinese pharma clients is instead of present on third-party meetings, well, of course, they are good big conferences, you can also organize your own meetings. Like one thing that is very popular among Chinese pharma is hot topics on how you solved a problem a Chinese pharma typically has. Like if you have a POPs writing project, and then you have a lot of challenges at the beginning, how you solved it and how you published it, whether in the form of a journal or a abstract or a poster or a presentation slide deck on a conference. Those are there. And then you can talk about that from beginning to end. The form can be a roundtable or webinar, and then they make excellent case studies. And then if you have a good relationship with the client, the Chinese pharma client, you can also invite them to be your guest. So all the parties involved are there. And then you can talk about it from beginning to end. This is very much welcomed by the Chinese pharma, because I discussed with a Chinese pharma colleague there, and then he made this suggestion. And then this can also show your excellent thought leadership. The next part is once you have a Chinese pharma client reach out to you, how you close deals on your proposal call with Chinese pharma clients. So I wanted to lay some background, or based on my experience, what you should be mindful about. Be mindful that there are different understandings of what each party should do from a MedComs agency or from a Chinese pharma. And then my suggestion is for the agency to take the initiative to discuss all possible questions that you can think about. Because oftentimes I notice that if there are some questions that are left undiscussed, and then you have something in your mind like, okay, so although we didn't discuss it, so this is common sense, like it should be done this way. But actually your common sense is not necessarily the common sense from the Chinese pharma side. They may have a different assumption, and then they may think, okay, this is common sense. And then when you really talk about it, you are thinking about different things. And then also some things, like very common that happen during public writing projects that you may want to take note, such as you need to educate the client authors a little bit about it's their responsibility to provide key messages and figures tables to include in a publication. Because if you don't discuss it, you will be surprised that sometimes they expect you to come up with those things. And another common thing is, for example, the figures the client provided don't meet journal requirements. In this case, you want to discuss very clearly who will withdraw the figures, because this will impact the budget and also the timeline. And another common one is if they haven't provided statistical analysis report, who will do statistical analysis, the client or the agency. And also very common topic, and you can probably imagine, is that you need to be prepared that the source materials may be in Chinese. In this case, there can be two solutions. One is that you ask the client to translate that into English, because oftentimes we see that journals request protocols to be submitted along with the manuscript. So the clients need to make it in English anyway. So they may well translate some other, like the CSR, SAP, SAR. Another way to do it is if the client is okay for you to source translation, and then you can also build the translation costs into your project fees, because those materials can be quite lengthy. As we understand about clinical study report, protocol, they can be lengthy. So this is something that you don't want to neglect. This is a real life example. Like you've got a prospect who's interested in your public writing services. So I mean, a Chinese pharma prospect. This is great. And then you've had email exchanges or even a short video call, but they ghosted you afterwards. That means that you follow up with emails, but then they disappear. They don't respond to your email. And you're like, everything looked to be going very well. So what's going on here? So according to my experience, the best practice on proposal call with Chinese prospects can be the following. So first, don't be concerned like you are discussing with the Chinese client, but you don't know Chinese, because it's expected that you don't know Chinese. After all, they are looking for your scientific expertise, your writing expertise, and most importantly, the native English writing expertise. However, you need to know that because most people can't speak English fluently, and they are hesitant to share their opinions. And it's very important here that silence does not mean agreement. Oftentimes, silence is not agreement. So what should you do? You should proactively engage them and always encourage questions. What I observe and what my Chinese colleagues observe is that when the discussion is in English, it's silent. But if it switches to Chinese, it's intense. This means that we can still encourage questions when the discussion is in English. So how? Here is an example of questions. Like after you present your proposal, be sure to ask them if they have any questions or concerns. The language you can use, this is just an example, like based on our discussion today, how are you feeling about working with us on a scale of 1 to 10? Then be quiet and let them talk. I know the silence is quite unbearable, and then we tend to continue without having their answers, but it's important to be quiet and let them talk. So if they gave you a rating of like less than 7 or 8, and then ask again, what would it take to get to 9 or 10? And again, be quiet and let them talk. You will be surprised because they will have simple questions when they voice their questions, and it's easy for you to answer. So you can address their concerns, and then the project can move along. Okay, great. So you got the project. Now talk about the project management. Once you secure the project, there are a few tips and tricks that, based on my experience, I think is probably the best practice. Like this one, ask the client to manage the authors, because oftentimes authors, clinicians are the client's key thought leaders. There are a few reasons, like the communication will be in Chinese. They are both in China, so it's easier for them to have face-to-face meetings. And we all know how important face-to-face connections are. And also it's easier for your workflow because from the client side, from the author side, there will only be one person to be your contact person. And then they will channel every information communication to you. It's easier for you. Another observation is like Chinese pharma clients like to target high impact factor journals, even though it's obvious to you that it's unrealistic, but their rationale is oftentimes it doesn't hurt to try, especially when the timeline is not an issue. So this can affect timeline and budget. And this needs to be communicated clearly at the beginning, because if they follow your instruction to target less ambitious impact factor journals, and then the timeline can be quicker. So of course, you always want to respect the client decision, and then the journal selection, after all, lies in the client or the authors. But communication is very important here. And then also be mindful that oftentimes we need to educate clients during the writing and publication process. Like I just put something here, and then for us, medical publication professionals outside of China, maybe it's very clear, but for them, it's not so much like authorship criteria, contributions. And I wanted to point out about the conflict of interest. The Chinese pharma or Chinese authors, they have a tendency to, when the journal asks about conflict of interest, they would say, no, 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 as if it's all no, it will be good for them. But here we need to make it very clear, like when in doubt, you need to disclose. And then the disclosure will not do you any harm. Actually, if anything, it will do you good to show that you are transparent. And then the conflict of interest will not impact whether a journal will accept your paper or not. So they are just sort of afraid, like if they disclose, maybe it will affect their paper publication negatively. and then we need to affirm them that it's not, when in doubt, disclose. And then also plagiarism, copyright is also very common there. So be prepared to show clients how to fill out various journal forms. And also I wanted to point out, like, plagiarism, because you can see I say here unintentional. Sometimes it's just the background is like in the education system, it's not stressed that much about plagiarism and copyright, and people overlooked it. So when you see like it's obvious plagiarism, to you it's obvious, to them not so much, because it's just not stressed in the education system. And also I wanted to stress, go the extra mile. It's probably also the case to every culture, but then remember, Chinese culture is passive. So if you are proactive, they will always appreciate it. And according to my experience, when there's a problem, try not to think negatively, such as these people are so different and I just don't understand why they act this way. Instead, put yourself in their shoes and remember, at the end of the day, we are all humans. I figure this can solve a lot of like mindset, because after all, we are talking about different cultures. I probably, in the interest of time, I have a few questions here. Like, let me cover it quickly because I'm mindful of the time. These are some of the questions like I often got asked from the clients or from colleagues. Like in terms of the when they choose agency or freelancer from the Chinese pharma client, oftentimes they prefer to work with a company or agency. So if you are a MedComms agency, it's worthwhile to take the time and effort to develop relationships with them, because they are primarily looking for an agency and then they are looking for you. And do Chinese projects have lower budgets? And the answer is no. So we can talk more about it at the end, but remember, this is no. How is CMPP certification viewed? Is highly regarded in China. So if you work around an agency, it's worthwhile to have CMPP certification in your agency. You need to have a physical office in China. The short answer is it depends. But the good news is that usually for the Chinese domestic pharma companies, you don't need an office in China to do business with. They are on the rise, and the demands for medical writing are very high. So there are good opportunities there, because in China, there are not only global pharma China offices, but also domestic pharma. We need to think about both terms. So I wanted to thank Lucy at GSK China for critically reviewing the slides, because although I work with Chinese clients, helping MedComms agencies working with Chinese clients on a regular basis, because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to visit China for 3 years, and I don't want to make any obvious mistake. And also my clients who allowed me to accumulate expertise on this area. So I hope today is just a little bit of the glimpse, because there are a lot more information, but because of the time, I can only share this much. After this, you are welcome to contact me for any questions, comments, and you can see my website, LinkedIn, email, and of course, WeChat. So I guess that's it.